Just like to welcome every single one of you today joining us for Thanksgiving service. And Lord is really happy to see you. Can you look up here? I really mean it. Lord is really happy to see you. Could you tell your neighbor that Lord is really happy to see you? Could you tell your neighbors? I don't know whether you believe it, but it is true. It is true. I don't know whether you believe it. Maybe you do, maybe you don't, but He really is pleased to see you. Okay? And if you could just look up here, because I really like to speak to the people to the face rather than, I want you to take a look at the title. You must stand before Caesar. It's a message in it of itself. Okay? Who could dare to say anything like that? You must do something. Who could dare to say that? Anybody could say it, but doesn't mean it's going to happen. Standing before Caesar, is that likely thing to happen to anybody? No. It's probably an unlikely thing. But this is God speaking to Paul in the middle of tempestuous storm that's been going on for 14 days. I don't know whether you ever been on a boat fishing. We go on a fishing and there are always people who get sick, usually men. Okay, I don't know why. Okay, usually men. We went fishing last year, New Heart people. It was 5 men. They were on the floor and near death. I'm not exaggerating. They woke up finally when we got back to the harbor and they, get their feet on the ground and they began to breathe like a human being. I'm not kidding. That's only 2-3 hours. Imagine 14 days, right? I can't even imagine. They threw up everything. They don't have any more fluid to throw up probably. And they have not eaten anything for 14 days. And God speaks to Paul, you must stand before Caesar. Here's a twist. Okay, during this time, first century, during the Roman Empire, people worship Caesar. Okay, so Caesar is the Lord. It's just me thinking. Caesar is the Lord. Caesar is my Kyrios, my Lord. Okay? It's interesting, when Jesus was born, that's when Emperor Augustus, who was a nephew of Caesar, the original Caesar, and began to be deified, and they began to worship Augustus, the emperor worship. Jesus and the emperor. I don't think that's coincident, by the way, right? And God is saying to Paul, you must stand before Caesar. I don't know whether it really happened according to the book of Acts, but I really do believe he stood before Caesar, because that's God's word. Paul already stood before 2 governors of the Roman Empire, Felix and Festus. That's an intimidating thing. Okay, we can't really describe that because the whole world was ruled by Roman Empire, and you stand before the governor of Roman Empire. That means you're standing before the entire government. Anything he says, it goes. He stood before Felix, he stood before Festus, and he stood before the king of Israel, Agrippa. Last week we talked about this. Now, Paul is on his way to Rome, okay? And we're just 2 chapters away from the end of the book, and this is 27th chapter. I don't know whether you understood as Josh was reading this chapter. If you just listen to it, you're probably like, oh man, what is going on here? It's all mess in the middle of the sea. Okay? But he gets to Rome and probably stood before Caesar. But I want to just tell you, we're all going to have to stand before the Caesar one day. We do. You must stand before the Lord. Okay, that as an introduction, I would like to begin today's message. Okay, Okay, Acts 27. I don't know whether you could see it. I wish I could turn off the light. This is a ship, and this is crazy picture of storm. You know, how many of you remember Sandy? You know, tropical storm Sandy. How long was that? Few hours, right? It was scary. 14 days, right? All hope lost. All hope is lost. And you're not eating anything. You threw up everything already. And you don't have any more fluid, anything in your stomach. And you're just lying and just tossing around, like, you know, with the storm. Okay? Acts chapter 27. I'm just going to pick up a few sections. Just try to explain this. When Luke is included, Luke is the author of Book of Acts, had sailed across the open sea along the coast of Cilicia and Pamphylia. I'll show you the map in a minute. We came to Myra, two places important, Myra and Fairhaven, okay, in Lycia, where the centurion find a ship of Alexandria sailing for Italy, okay? The word Italy comes out in the Bible. I don't know whether you knew. They were eliminated from World Cup, right? But Alexandria sailing for Italy and put us on board. We came to a place called Fair Havens, near which was the city of Lycia. Now listen to this. When much time has passed and the voyage was now dangerous because even the fast was already over. In other words, it's winter is coming, they shouldn't travel anymore. So Paul suggested, okay, saying, "Sir, I perceive that the voyage will be with injury and much loss, not only of the cargo, but in the ship, but also our lives." What is this? Can you remember? Oh. Okay. But listen to this. But centurion, the Roman soldier, paid more attention to Pilate and the owner of the ship than what Paul said. Worthy to notice. God spoke through Paul, but people don't pay attention. They pay attention to experts. Okay? So they sailed on. Okay? Here's the map. Okay? He started from Jerusalem and Caesarea right here. From here all the way to Rome. Took about 3 to 4 months. Okay? He sailed from Myra through Myra, right here, Myra. Okay, which is Asia, Turkey. And Cilicia area, this is where Paul is from. And through this, and they come to Fairhaven, right here, Crete, island of Crete. And from here to Malta, which is island of Italy, took 14 days of tempestuous storm. Okay, that's what this chapter is about. It's pretty exciting. If you understand this chapter, it's pretty exciting. And it's historical. And Luke is a historian, medical doctor. He wrote like a historian. I don't know whether you believe Bible as a history. It is historical, historically reliable. And I know I say this every Sunday just to let you know, because a lot of people think Bible is myth, science is real. Bible is historical, historically reliable. Every city that is mentioned in the Bible in the book of Acts is real city, still exist. Okay? So here's a picture. Okay? So they sailed on. Guess what happened? Soon, a tempestuous wind called Northeaster, Maria, Harvey, came and struck down. Can you imagine this? Okay? Can you imagine this? Just want us to just get the feel for it, begin to feel. We're getting into a storm right now, like together. Soon, a tempestuous wind called Northeaster struck down from the land. And when the ship was caught and could not face the wind, we gave it to it and were driven along. In other words, we can't drive it anymore. We're just kind of like tossed along, wherever the wind takes us. Helpless. Since we were violently storm-tossed, they began the next day to jettison the cargo. They began to throw away everything to lighten up the ship so that you'll be safer. And it gets even worse. And on the third day, they threw the ship's tackle overboard with their own hands. I'm not sure exactly what that is. In other words, they have no control of a ship anymore. They just given up everything. And it gets even worse, okay? Verse 20, when neither sun nor stars appeared. In other words, it's just wind and rain for day and night for 14 days. When neither sun nor stars appeared for many days, no small tempest lay on us. All hope of our being saved was at last abandoned. Even that is gone. It's gone. Okay, that's the setting. Okay? I pick a picture. I don't know whether you can see it. I ask you to take a look at it. Can you imagine? You're in the middle of something like this. Okay. Middle of northeaster, category 5 for 14 days, day and night. Okay? That's what happens in the second to the last chapter of Book of Acts. Paul must get to Rome, but this is the journey to Rome. Think about it. Paul must get to Rome, but this is the journey to Rome. In the middle of something like this, Paul stands up, okay? Now he speaks among them and said, "Men, you should have listened to me and not have set sail from Crete and incurred this injury and loss. Yet now I urge you to take heart, for there will be no loss of life among you, but only the ship." How does he know this, right? How does he speak like this? Verse 23, "For this very night there stood before me an angel of God to whom I belong and I worship." And he said, "Do not be afraid, Paul." This is angel speaking to Paul. "Do not be afraid, Paul. You must stand before Caesar. And behold, God has granted you all those with you who sail with you." He spoke to me. Okay. "So take heart, men, for I have faith in God that it will be exactly as I have been told. But we must run around some islands." "Take heart, take courage, men, for I have faith in God that it will happen just as He told me." What is faith? Faith is believing what He promised already. That's what faith is. His word. We know Scripture, perhaps we went to church, but faith becomes visualized in the middle of the storm. In a broad daylight, when everything is handy and dandy, faith doesn't really shine. But in the middle of the storm, faith shines. Okay? And fearing that we might run on the rocks. So they continue to travel like this, okay? Like this for 2 weeks. Okay? And they come to near Sicily, Italy, island called Malta. And as they were getting near the island, people were afraid that it might hit rock and it may just, the ship may just break. So see what happens. Okay, some of them fearing that we might run on the rocks, and they let down 4 anchors from the stern and pray for days to come. And some sailors were seeking to escape from the ship and had lowered the ship's boat into the sea under the pretense of laying out anchors from the bow. Okay, this is what's happening, okay? They were getting near the island, so sailors, they were the ones who were running the ship, and they wanted to just get out to save themselves. Forget about these people, just us. So they lower the, what do you call that ship? Little boat? in a big boat. What do you call that? Little boat in a big boat. Okay. Okay. They lowered it and try to, act as if they are doing something and try to run away. Sneaky people. Sneaky people. Always people like that. And Paul saw that, and this is what Paul said. Unless these men stay in the boat, in the ship, they cannot be saved. They must stay in the ship where God said He will save. Okay? Then the soldiers cut away the ropes of the ship's boat and let it go. Okay? So, this is the toward the end of the chapter. As days were about to dawn in the morning, Paul urged them to take some food, saying, "Today is the 14th day that you have not continued in suspense and without food, having taken nothing. Therefore I urge you to take some food. It'll give you strength, for not a hair is to perish from the head of any of you." And when he had said these things, he took bread and gave thanks to God in presence of all, and he broke it and began to eat. And when they were all encouraged and ate some food themselves, we were 276 persons in the ship. Okay? And last part. But striking a reef, still they had trouble getting to the land. Okay? They ran the vessel around, both struck and remained immovable. And the stern, the back of the ship, was being broken up by the surf. So here's the last hurdle. The Roman soldiers planned to kill the prisoners, which included Paul, lest any should swim away and escape. But the centurion, wishing to save Paul, don't know why, but he wanted to save Paul, kept them from carrying out their plan. He ordered those who could swim to jump and overboard first and make for the land, and the rest of the planks and the pieces of ship. And so it was, all were brought to salvation to the land. That's chapter 27. Okay? Here is the island of Malta. I guess this is Paul, right? And this is the centurion, 276 people. Ship is sinking, but everybody was saved. Okay? Why is this story here? What is this story? I don't know, those of you who read Book of Acts, once you get to this part of Book of Acts, we get lost. What is going on? Festus, Felix, Agrippa, storm, Malta, we get lost. What is this story about? I just thought of a few thoughts from this chapter. Okay? This is Paul's journey to Rome. This was the journey. Okay? You must stand before Caesar. You must testify in Rome. But this was the journey. I'm thinking, if God really means it, can he take a flight from like Caesarea to Rome nonstop business class? You can't do that. I guess he could have done it. But he did not do it that way. Right? Instead, this incredible 3-month journey of storm. Okay. Why was he going there, by the way? There's a human reason, and then there's God's reason. There's a human purpose, and then there's God's purpose. Okay? Here are some human reasons. Because he pleaded that I want to be tested by Caesar himself. Right? Basically, Paul asked to be seen by Caesar, and he could have been released according to Felix or Festus, Roman governors, or Agrippa, Jewish king. He could have been delivered because he hasn't done anything, any crime that deserved of capital punishment. He could have lived. But he ended up, I want to be seen by Caesar. I want him to judge. Okay, that was the plan. But what's really going on? It is the plan of God. There's a plan of man, and there is a plan of God. 3 years ago, in Acts chapter 23, when Paul was first arrested in Jerusalem, God appeared to Paul and said this 3 years ago. Okay, Lord stood before Paul. Take courage, Paul. Just as you testified my name in Jerusalem, you must testify in Rome. 3 years ago. Okay? And this is 3 years later. God had a plan. Now hold on, because I know all of you are listening, because you have many plans, don't you? Man's plan. And then there is God's plan. Okay, let's see what happens. Okay? That's just a couple of years ago, 3 years ago. His promise, his plan, his purpose. But today he shows up again in the middle of the storm and basically said, don't be afraid, Paul. You must stand before Caesar. He repeats what he said. No new promise. No new promise. Right? Now, can I just tell you? The plan of man, and basically they sail on, even though Paul said, no, don't go. It's too dangerous. But they trusted men, experts, captain, more, and they sail on, right? And then toward the end of the chapter, they wanted to save themselves by lowering a little boat. We always try to do that, try to sneak away. But Paul said, no, unless you stay in the ship, you will not be saved. Right? And at the end, the soldiers wanted to kill them because shipwrecks and the prisoners run and they'll be punished. So they wanted to kill the prisoners, but they couldn't because Centurion said, no, don't kill. Right? Why is it? You know why? I really ask you to take a look at this. Many are the plans in a man's heart, but it is the Lord's purpose that prevails. This is a verse that I treasure in my heart for so many years. Many are the plans in a man's heart, but it is the Lord's purpose that prevails. What do you see here in this verse? 2 plans and 1 prevails. What does it say? Many are the plans of men. And then there is plan of God. Which one stands? It's going to be the Lord's purpose that prevails. Sovereignty. Some of you say, I knew it. God does not give us freedom. Right? It's predestination. Do you know word predestination assumes His benevolence and love towards you? We often use that word to accuse God for not being good to me. But the Bible clearly says He is benevolent, loving towards you. Whereas you are not. Those people who are saying that you are not. You're accusing Him. God has a plan. Many are your plans. Okay, by next year in May, I'm planning to graduate. I plan to graduate by next May. That's my plan. Okay, by next year, this time, maybe we'll have a church. That's my plan. By few years, this time, we'll have discipleship running like crazy. That's my plan. We have many plans, but it is the Lord's purpose that prevails. And He is good, and He's benevolent, He's loving towards you. So don't accuse Him. Predestination assumes His benevolence and love towards you. Don't accuse Him. Because when you accuse, you're not loving Him, you're accusing Him. Right? You can't do that. Right? What happened to carry out His purpose? Julius, the centurion, was kind to Paul. He didn't want to kill Paul. Why? I don't know. Right? And the ship in suspense for 14 days, but no one lost their lives. How? I don't know. Other than God's plan. Right? And to carry out all of these, God showed up Himself to Paul. Paul, don't be afraid. You must stand before Caesar. And every one of 275 people, 206 with you, I will spare their lives. Why? Don't know. That's His plan. Okay? Second thought. This ship right here, okay? It was a ship that's from Alexandria. Those of you who do not know where Alexandria is, it's in Egypt, North Africa. Okay? It was a commercial boat, and the centurion picked up that boat in a place called Myra, and they sailed to Fairhaven. Okay? So who was in that ship? 276 of them. Could you listen to this? If you could pay attention here. Yeah. One, I think the captain was there. Pilot was there. Sailors were there from Alexandria. So what kind of people? I don't know. Maybe North Africans, perhaps Middle Eastern people, perhaps Asians, perhaps Europeans. I don't even know. Right? So you imagine. Second category of people, who were there? Who was in that boat? Roman soldiers, centurion and his squad. I don't know how many people. Maybe 100 people. It couldn't have been 100. Soldiers. Roman soldiers. And third category of people, who was there? Prisoners. And one of them is Paul. Let me repeat that, okay? The sailors from Alexandria, Roman soldiers, and the prisoners. 276 people, more than double of this size, I think, right now. Quite a mix, isn't it? Sailing in the storm together for 14 days. We're sailing in the storm together, sailing in the storm of God together. What is this? You know what I was thinking? If you could just think with me. That's a church. I was thinking, church. Church. I imagine a church. Noah's Ark. So I'm not just completely out of the picture. Right? Noah's Ark. Heading towards Rome. The destiny of God together. But it's really for Paul. But they're all sailing together in the middle of the storm. We try to figure out why storm instead of a business class Air Italia to Rome. A violent, tempestuous storm for 14 days. All hope abandoned. Romans try to kill them. But Paul stands up for one reason or another because God spoke to him. Take courage, man. You're not going to lose your hair. Not even a hair up from your head. No life will be lost. Take heart. Because God spoke to me and I have faith in God that it'll happen just as He told me so. Right? So that's what happens. And Paul said later to those smart sailors who wants to get off from the ship, the church, to save themselves. Unless these men stays in the ship, they're not going to be saved. I don't know. You think there are a lot of ways, we think a lot of ways to do better in this life, right? But unless you stay in the ship, you're not going to be saved. Okay? Don't think too theologically here. But I think, these are some implications. So what did the soldiers do? Listening to centurion, they cut away. They cut away the rope and let it go. You know what you need to do? You need to let it go. Your little wisdom. You need to let it go. Right? What's the outcome? What happened? What's the outcome of everything? Ship wrecked, but lives saved. God never promised this ship will be saved, but He saved none of them. 276 people of them will lose their lives. Ship is wrecked, but the lives were saved. Right? Third and final thought, and here's the real question, okay? The question that I raised in the beginning. God, why so hard? If He needs to stand before Caesar, you could just take Him there, right? Smoothly. Why storms? From Caesarea to Rome, Air Italia, business, get me out of business class. does not happen. It did not happen. Why so hard? Why not so smooth? Why storms? I think two reasons. If you could just think with me, two reasons. Number one, faith. Number two, to save lives. Okay, let me explain, okay? Number one, faith. Number two, to save lives. You know, do you remember the story when Jesus was on a boat with the disciples and all of a sudden a very violent storm, squall came in the middle of Galilee. They were all sinking. And what was Jesus doing in that story? He was in the stern of the ship. He was sleeping. So the disciples were panicking. They were seasoned fishermen. They know everything. They know how to save themselves. They did everything. Now they're panicking. And basically so panicking that waking up Jesus. Jesus, don't you care? Don't you care about us? Jesus wakes up, right? Doesn't say a word. He stands up, rebukes the wind. Rebukes the wind. And be still. Be still. He spoke to the waves. And the Erie immediately, shh. Can you even imagine? Disciples were so scared. You know why? This is even scarier than the storm. Who is this man? Fear of God. And Jesus said to disciples, why are you so afraid? Where is your faith? Where is your faith? You know what? Faith, really, you can't really tell your faith when everything is so bright and dandy. You can't really tell. But I think faith develops and actualizes in the middle of storms. Are you listening? Faith, real faith, develops and actualizes, and I believe shines in the middle of storms. Didn't Paul say, I have faith in God that it'll happen just as he told me? Didn't he say that? Brothers and sisters, on this day we celebrate Thanksgiving. Do you have faith? Where's your faith? You may be in the middle of the storm right now. Tempestuous, northeaster, Harvey, Sandy, Maria. I don't know. You may be in the middle of it right now. All hope abandoned. You did everything. You did everything possible. All hope lost. Faith is developed and actualizes and shines in the storm, brothers and sisters. Secondly, it saves lives. Paul could have got to Rome all by himself, no problem. No one would be saved. But 276 people, because of Paul, they saw God that Paul believes. It doesn't say it, but what's the chance of they believing in that God that Paul serves and belongs to? Do you understand that? Along the way, it took 4 months. It really is crazy. But because of this chapter, 276 people had a chance to see God, real God, that Paul believed. It saves lives. It saves lives. Can I just close with this thought? I believe Paul, he gets to Rome next week. We're going to talk about chapter 28. He goes to Rome, stay there for 2 years. It doesn't say he saw the Caesar yet, but I believe he stood before Caesar. Can I just ask you, what do you think Paul said to Caesar? knowing Paul that we saw in the book of Acts. I believe the same message. Death and resurrection of Messiah. And I pray that you, Caesar, will be what I am. I really do. I think that's what he would have said to Caesar. I want you, not only you, but all to become what I am. I believe he said that. He would say that. He stood before Caesar, you know, and he may have said, Caesar, you're going to have to stand before the Lord one day. You're going to have to stand before the Lord. Jesus is curious, not Caesar. Brothers and sisters, Lord is gracious to us. Many other plans. I don't think it's bad to plan things. But it is the Lord's purpose that will prevail. So seek Him. Seek Him. Don't be the curious of the Lord. Don't be the Caesar of the Lord. Seek Him. Are you in the middle of a major storm right now? Can I just tell you what Paul just said? Do not be afraid. Take heart. Take heart. You must stand before Caesar. Take heart. No lives will be lost. Take heart. Let's pray.